The purchasing power of the dollar in January dropped by 1.5% year-over-year to another record low. The overall CPI for urban consumers, the politically correct way of expressing the decline in the purchasing power of the dollar, rose 1.4% in January, compared to a year earlier. Medical prices increase at 5% per year. Tuition increases 5% per year. Stock markets are hyperinflated. House prices have skyrocketed again due to printing massive amounts and people running away from the cities. Food prices are also up 10 to 20% in the last 4 months. Not only have the food prices gone up, but likely the sizes have gone down at the same time. With $1 trillion about to hit the system and another $1.9 trillion being pushed through soon, and the administration talking about an FY22 budget of $6 trillion, we are looking at exploding inflation no matter what. And the lying Fed and our Soviet-style CPI stats say inflation is under 2%. Even if it is 18%, the Fed says it's 2%. That is the magic cap. So it makes no difference, except to us poor schmucks that are taking it in the rear. 22% of all dollars in existence were created last year. That's 28% yearly inflation. Inflation expectations are solidly on the rise, and that spells big problems for the financial system. A large, often overlooked contributor to this falling velocity is rooted in the growing inequality of wealth distribution. Simply put, as wealth matriculated to a smaller share of the population at the top, the money they acquired has been put into investments where it just sits. All this means when money starts to be reallocated and shifted to other investments, the effect on inflation could be quite dramatic. What comes next is when most realize the currency debasement taking place all at once and their rush to spend those soon-to-be worthless dollars now before prices rise even more. This subtracts from an already weak supply chain, creating shortages and scarcity of some items, not unlike the origins of hyperinflation. Inflation is starting to take off in a big way, and it's going to get a lot worse. It will erode wages, earning power, and purchasing power. And that's without a $15 per hour minimum wage hike. Getting paid $1,400 for staying home watching TV sounds pretty good. I'm sure at least 6 to 7 billion people would be happy to trade places with us. What we should be worried about is when our printing press is not working anymore. This madness is only just getting started. Wait for negative rates, and heavily debted entities start calling their debt on balance sheets an asset as they tout themselves as financial geniuses. Justifying the debt as now an instrument that pays a rate of return, flipping the finger at us all. There is no denying inflation is rampant. This scam of a system is dying before our eyes, and good riddance. The Fed is just a counterfeiting operation of epic proportions. And the US government is the largest crime syndicate in the world, bar none. Printing money and inflating the currency takes away purchasing power. The Fed redirects the wealth to their partners in crime. The so-called world leaders are elites. The Feds have been caught with their pants down before. This next crash will be triggered by the cryptos. The currency markets will follow suit as investors all rush for the single, narrow exit. A crash is a crash. The Fed can step in and bring prices back up, but the damage will have been done. Going deeper into credit card debt and calling it an economic boom. That's what we're seeing. What happens in a few months from now when nobody is able to cover their rent? Old and occupied RVs coming to park on the street near you soon, if not already. May we all find a better day. The sooner we get this sham over with, the sooner we can start fresh. The Fed is trapped, not sure what move they have left. Screwed if they keep printing, screwed if they stop. They will probably start World War III. Slaves didn't have to pay their masters to go to work. That is essentially what we are currently doing now. Free the people, enslave the currency. Welcome back to the Atlantis Report. You are here for your daily dose of the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Please take a second to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to also hit the notification bell. In a world where everything is created out of thin air, trying to produce real things is clearly a value-losing proposition. Only companies that produce nothing real have value. It's an absolutely sickening, disgusting indictment of the Fed and their policies. They've destroyed the economy and price discovery. They've made a charlatan the world's richest man. So now Tesla could easily buy GM and Ford and almost monopolize the entire US car production. An opportunity to force everybody to go electric. The question is why Tesla doesn't, and buys Bitcoin instead. I'm not quite sure why Tesla would even worry about that dirty business of making and selling cars anymore. Just issue TSLA stock and move anything with the proceeds, and we have a never-ending carousel of self-reinforcing returns. I suspect Tesla made more return on BTC in a week than in a decade of making car stuff. The bottom line is that we are now living in a fake world. Statistics are fake. The news is fake. Economics are fake. The stock market is fake. The government is fake. Most of what you think you know is fake. All you can do at this point is to refuse to believe any of it, and concentrate on your own personal life, and becoming as self-sufficient as possible. It is insane to believe in or participate in a fake game. What is real is that we are heading for a very dark time, and those who are not prepared when that time comes are going to be in a bad situation. The only reason the market is up is central banks are printing trillions out of thin air and giving it to speculators via banks. In 10 years, the debt has more than doubled, meaning what debt we had in the entire history of the world has been added in just the last 10 years. The central banks not only have screwed the world and savers. They are dishonest, morally, and ethically corrupt in defending the bad policies and creating poverty and inequality. End of 2019 outstanding known debt is about 285 to 300 trillion estimated, in 2018, 260 trillion. The massive tax cuts for the rich have also been propping up the stock market for 4 decades. It will be interesting to see what happens if the country ever plucks its head out of its butt and goes back to sensible progressive taxation. The zero and negative interest rates created zombie private and public balances. Zombie companies do not compete for positive returns, and they are not productive. The 2009 financial crisis bubble burst in stocks, and housing deteriorates the balances that increase private savings next year to fix balances. To stimulate less savings and realize more projects, to avoid secular stagnation, the EU introduces negative interest rates. But agents do not borrow with broken balances, and there is no effect of the negative interest rate. EU goes into the sovereign debt crisis in 2012 when governments are trying to borrow excess private savings with budget deficits. So EU realizes negative return projects to use savings until agents fix their balances and start to borrow again to realize positive return projects. There are a lot of private and public negative yields now in the world that is negative return projects. The USA also follows the way of Japanification by the government borrowing excess savings that also creates zombie companies. It is better to go in deleverage and in 10 years to reach the initial level even for 50% GDP decline as is the case for this big deleverage than to go for 30 years and more with zero economic growth as in Japan. Not to mention that debt monetization QE power money increase is sure pending hyperinflation when money multiplier increases again. Printing enough U.S. legal tender to funnel to cronies to buy all of that out by the Fed banksters would just create hyperinflation that would be distressful even to foreign investors. Thus, while I cannot predict when they will lose control, and it may not even happen in 2021 given the vast powers of the Fed to manipulate and the debts owed to it by foreign banks since it has bailed them out before, the stock market will crash. See, the Fed's $16 trillion bailouts reported by Tracy Greenstein in the excellent Forbes magazine. A lot of companies are running on fumes, are over-leveraged, and/or had few real future prospects even before the pandemic. Even the stock prices of good companies will likely crash because of reverse multiplier effects as their customers lose wealth and spend less and the retailers servicing them have less income, and their suppliers have less income, etc., albeit many will later recover to some extent. Thus, there is no safe harbor. I just hope that some analysts are correct, and this crash will cause Americans to finally lose faith in and end the Federal Reserve bankster cartel, the biggest parasite and impediment to Americans' future welfare. At the bottom, it's simple wealth transfer, of what little wealth is left in an almost all-services economy. The oligarchy and their Fed is gorging and laughing at the serfs. Occasionally they'll sweep a few crumbs off the table, onto the floor, for the rest of us to fight over. And they are toasting each other at Davos and Jackson Hole for what an excellent job they're doing. They meet with the media every few months to assure us that there is more on the way, a lot more. This is the Great Reset, you will own nothing, and you will be happy. It's counterfeiting that is destroying our standard of living. The banks and government are stealing everything. GameStop was shorted by hedge funds by counterfeiting sales of shares, selling up to 100% more shares than the company had issued. The company's share price was destroyed by naked short selling, i.e., selling something they didn't own. The counterfeited script, you might say. The Federal Reserve, in cahoots with our government, counterfeits script at a pace of $1 million every 13 seconds. They are selling you short. They are destroying the exchange price of your labor. For every hour that you are lucky enough to make $15 on minimum wage, they short your labor. They are shorting the nation until it's destroyed. The inflation in money has gone to the parasite Wall Street class for decades in the way of monetary seigniorage. It covers hookers' ad blow, barely. Enough. Nothing like being the first hog at the trough. They get to spend their money at zero inflation. It is their grand plan for universal slavery. You will own nothing and be happy about it. Inflation is dollar debasement, coin clipping, unsound money by another name. Why should the owners of the printing press be given the leeway to take away the money you earned by your labor? What, pray tell, is the moral rationale for the owners of the Federal Reserve System to do such a thing to your money, which is a representation of the energy you spent to earn it? Not only is inflation a tax, it is the most regressive forms of taxation. The poor pay the highest percentage of their income. Under inflation, everybody loses except the largest banks. All by design. The switch to communism requires dependency, which is why the government intentionally drives economic crises and wants the population drugged out of their minds. Buy land, gold, silver, income-producing assets, and stay out of non-productive debt. Hope for the best. That's how it has worked since 1913. Keep stacking those precious metals. It's the only insurance you have against the artificially manipulated monetary system controlled by the Fed.